Alright, I've got a bunch of knives here which are essentially all the same. It's the Schrade Frontier. Those are two different blade lengths and two different types of handle scales. The TPE, or a thermoplastic elastomer, which is a type of rubber, and the Micarta. These were sent to me as a review sample quite a while ago actually, and I did some tests this summer, but I wanted to wait until they're officially out so people can actually buy them if they would like to. So the two variations are the SCHF51, which is the shorter version, and the SCHF52. And the M stands for Micarta, so those are the differences right there. The price for the longer version is $40 to $50 US. And well, let's take a look at these. And I'll let you know what I think. So for the tests, I've been using this one here in particular because I do prefer the TPE handles. The Micarta looks a lot better in my opinion, and it is a little more damage resistant. It's just harder material. But the nice thing about the TPE is it has a little bit of give, so it can absorb some of the shock as you're chopping, and it feels really good. It gives you a nice degree of traction, which the Micarta handles do too, but they feel just a little more abrasive. I mean, no big deal at all, and if you generally prefer wooden handles or other types of hard handles, you may prefer that, but personally I definitely enjoy the TPE. To give you a closer look here, as you can see, the knife is full tang, and the handle scales are quite nice. They work really well. The texture gives you a very positive grip. Looks a little odd maybe, but that's personal preference, of course. The only drawback of that is it makes it a little harder to clean. Dirt has a way of gathering in these circular patterns, but no big deal really. It's a used knife anyway, so this would be particularly for camping, bushcraft, survival, that sort of thing. And I definitely like the overall shape. It's very ergonomic, and it's quite nice to have this sort of hook here at the end that definitely makes sure that your hand stays right there. And if you want to choke down and use only 2 or 3 fingers, you can do that just fine. And this makes sure that the hands stay on there. I haven't had any problems with that. With some knives, sometimes there's something off about the shape or the angle, and it tends to beat up the finger as you're chopping. With this one, I haven't had that problem. Might also be due to the TPE absorbing some of the shock. For comparison, here's the Micarta handle. Looks a lot better, in my opinion, and should be able to take abrasion or any kind of damage from being dropped or anything like that a little better maybe than a TPE. But then again, it could also crack, which the rubber will not. So there is always pros and cons here. One thing I've noticed on these is that the corner here is a little sharper than on the TPE version. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but I'll just try to show that in a side-by-side comparison here. Let's see. So might be a little tricky to see, but you can definitely feel it. Might also be due to the material. But this here is just slightly, very slightly more rounded, which is just ever so slightly more comfortable. But it's not a big difference really. In general, I'm very happy with the shape of the handle. Definitely good job on that. It's a pretty large finger choil here. Some people like it, some don't. I definitely like to have the option to choke up on the blade to do finer cutting. And the blade is made of 1095 high carbon steel, which is always a really good choice for knives. I don't know exactly what hardness they tempered it to, but from using it, seems fine. In general, I mean, you kind of almost have to go out of your way to mess up 1095, so to speak. I mean, if it's really bad tempering, of course, that's a problem, but it's very good steel, so no concern there. I'm not sure how well I can show the grind here. Hopefully it'll show up. I'll just right the focus here a little bit. So it is a hollow grind. It has quite a strong secondary bevel, and it's relatively thick towards the edge, at least compared to some other knives I've handled. As far as the sharpness is concerned, I'll show you on the SCHF51 since I haven't used this one. As you can see, it does tear the paper to an extent. It does cut it, so it's definitely usable condition. So the sharpness out of the box is okay, and for the larger one it works just fine. But for the smaller knife, I'm not quite satisfied. I would prefer if the blade tapered a little more towards the edge, if it just became a little finer, and also if the overall blade was thinner. I see no reason at all to have such a thick blade on a short knife like this. It's the exact same thickness on the two, and I don't quite see it. You can definitely use a thick blade like that for chopping, and for that it's good to have that. But this here, well, you can chop with it to an extent, and I tried it, but as you can imagine, it's not particularly useful for that. It's just a little too small. And so what the thickness does for this size is just make it heavier. The way you would use a small knife like this will never put enough stress on the blade to really threaten bending or breaking it. So there's not much of a point to it. So personally, I'd much rather have a smaller blade with a finer edge for a knife of this size. Because if you wanted to do anything like detail carving or cutting food or rope or anything like that, then this is not going to perform as well as a thinner blade with a smaller secondary bevel. It's just unnecessarily heavy duty for its own sake. So I don't quite see the point of this size here. The larger one works just fine. No problem with that whatsoever. And yeah, as you can see, the finish is rubbed off a little bit there, which is to be expected, especially with batoning. It did take that just fine. It's still perfectly straight, as you can hopefully see. So no issue there. For chopping and splitting wood, this is a great knife. I can't complain about it. For finer detail cutting, not quite as good. But as a universal tool, so to speak, if you don't want to carry several knives or an axe and a knife or two knives, anything like that, then this is pretty good. Durability is fine. There is a little bit of edge damage down here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. There's a bit of reflection on the edge, but this may be hard to see. I just can't tell if it shows up. But really no problem. Let's take a look at the sheath. It seems okay, not exceptional. Oh, there are no massive flaws that I can see. There are a few bits where you have some loose threads here and there, but overall the stitching seems all right. The fit is very loose, definitely rattly, and the knife just slides out, so you would have to rely on the strap here to keep it in, which is not ideal. But what I do like about the sheath is that it has a bit of paracord here for tying to your leg, and particularly that it comes with nice accessories. It comes with a sharpener. That's always good to see. And it also comes with a ferro rod with striker. And it works really well. Just gonna show you real quick here. There we go. You can also use the knife blade itself to throw sparks, which works just fine, as you can see. But it will mark the spine, so if you don't like that, then definitely better to use a striker. And there you have it. In my opinion, it's quite a decent knife. Practical design, affordable, works well, sturdy. Could definitely have a sharper edge, but otherwise, I could really only offer a few nitpicks. Like, for example, the finger choil doesn't have to be that large. If you reduced it to about, I don't know, 2/3 the size, or maybe even half, that would still be enough to get just, well, a couple more millimeters of cutting edge. Not that big of a deal to me, but I know that, you know, these things bother a few people. So otherwise, really, as I said, I kind of prefer the TPE version for chopping, but the Micarta definitely looks good, and they both have their pros and cons. So really, the longer version, the SCHF52, I can easily recommend. The shorter one, I don't know, not my thing. I don't consider it to be all that practical. But it's still the same basic design, so really it's just the length difference. And yes, in some situations length can indeed matter. But of course, depending on how you use it, that always applies. Anyway, before I get too much into cheesy jokes here, let's just leave it at that. So yeah, I do like it. Not perfect, but pretty good. So as always, I hope you found the review helpful, and thanks for watching.